Marvel is one of the most iconic parts of Hollywood, and for a very long time, when people thought about superheroes, they immediately thought about the MCU. While Marvel was busy being the good guys, a show called The Boys was quietly telling the exact opposite kind of superhero story, and these two didn't just feel different. They had completely different identities about what a hero even is. Fast forward to today, and The Boys just wrapped up as one of the most talked about superhero stories in years. Well, the MCU feels kinda stuck, way less relevant, and struggling to recapture the magic it once had. But why? Why are people connecting with a show that tears superheroes apart more than the studio that made us fall in love with them in the first place? What does The Boys understand about superheroes that Marvel doesn't? And ultimately, who's actually telling the truth? To see what The Boys is pushing against, you first have to understand what Marvel actually believes, because it's been telling you the same thing since 2008. Start with Iron Man, the movie that kicked off the whole thing. Tony Stark begins as an arrogant arms dealer who profits off war, until a brush with death makes him shut the weapons business down and use his genius to protect people instead.
I mean, come on, we got a plan, we're gonna stick to it.
This was always the plan, Stark.
By the end, he's a hero, and the world is better for it. The message is quietly baked in there. Power in the right hands becomes good, and Tony was always special, so once he points that talent in the right direction, everyone wins. Then you've got the peak, Infinity War and Endgame. Thanos wipes out half of all life in the universe, the single biggest loss the franchise could even imagine. And the heroes just refuse to accept it, so they go back, they fight, and they undo it. The whole emotional core of those movies is that with heroes around, even the most permanent catastrophe can be reversed, and without them, the universe just stays broken. Heroes are what save us when nothing else can. And then there's one of Marvel's most recent swings, the Thunderbolts, a team built out of assassins, criminals, and broken people who are supposed to be darker than your average Avenger. But the movie still lands in the exact same place, because even though these people have done terrible things, the second they end up fighting on the right side, the film decides they're redeemable, and they're the good guys now. Even when Marvel tries to get dark, it can't stop reassuring you. Put all that together, and you get Marvel's whole idea of what a hero is. Heroism is a calling reserved for the worthy. The people who get the powers are good by default, so you can trust them. Any collateral damage is justified by the bigger threat, and the line between good and evil stays clean enough that you never have to wonder whose side to be on. And to be fair, this isn't a flaw, it's a choice, and it has real strengths. There's something powerful about knowing who the good guys are and watching them win, because it gives people clarity and hope for a reason to believe that courage matters, and it's a message that works for any age and any country. That's a big part of how Marvel became the biggest franchise on the planet. I also want to be fair in the way a lot of critics aren't, because Marvel does poke at his own assumptions sometimes. Civil War asks whether heroes should be held accountable, and Age of Ultron has Tony accidentally build the exact threat he's trying to stop. The problem isn't that Marvel never raises the question, it's that it never actually lives there, since the question always gets raised and then safely resolved, while the basic faith survives. Heroes are special, heroes are good, and the world is better with them in it. That faith is the foundation everything else sits on, and it's the exact foundation The Boys was built to kick out from under you. So The Boys takes that foundation and asks the most obvious question Marvel never will. What if you gave that kind of power to a real person? Not a chosen one, not a worthy one, just a person, with all the ego and damage and pettiness that comes with being human. And the clearest answer to that is Homelander, because he's the entire thesis in one character. On paper, he's basically Superman. He flies, he's nearly invulnerable, he shoots lasers out of his eyes, and he stands in front of the whole country wrapped in the flag as the greatest hero alive. But everything underneath is the opposite. Superman was raised with loving parents on a farm, while Homelander was raised in a lab by a corporation that treated him like a product, with no parents, no friends, and no love of any kind.
It's okay. We'll take care of her. Just like the others.
Yet another incident. But this time the subject was not driven by anger, but by something else altogether.
So when you give those two the same powers, you get completely opposite people. Because the power was never the thing that made Superman good. His childhood was, and his choices were. That's the part Marvel's whole model misses, because it assumes the cape comes with a conscience. The Boys shows that power doesn't hand you goodness, it just removes the limits on whoever you already are. And underneath the smile, Homelander is an insecure, emotionally stunted man who was never loved and is desperate to be worshipped. So worship is exactly what that power chases. He lets a plane full of people crash into the ocean rather than risk a rescue that might make him look weak, because his image matters to him more than their lives.
Once again, the horrific wreckage of transoceanic Flight 37 just beginning to wash up on shore. Every passenger on board presumed dead.
He throws tantrums that could level a city block. And by the time the show ends, the outright control of the country, a beloved strongman the public actually chose. What makes him so unsettling is that the show still makes you understand him. There are moments where the most powerful being on the planet just looks like a kid who was never good enough for anyone, who learned cruelty because it was the only language he was ever taught. The show refuses to let him be a simple monster, because a simple monster would be comforting, and nothing about Homelander is meant to comfort you. A Marvel villain is someone you wait to watch get punched, but Homelander is something worse, because he's what the hero would actually be. The second thing the boys understands is where superheroes actually come from, and it isn't destiny. It's a corporation. In this world, nobody is chosen. The heroes are manufactured because a company called Vought injects babies with a drug called Compound V, and the ones who survive with powers get scouted, branded, ranked, and sold to the public like a product line. Heroism isn't a calling, it's an industry, and the heroes are the inventory. Once you see that, the whole machine comes into focus, because Vought doesn't care whether its heroes are good, it cares whether they sell. The Seven are a brand. Their rescues are staged for the cameras. Their public images are built by PR teams and focus groups. And the gap between who they are on camera and who they are in private is the engine for the entire show. The clearest example is Stormfront, a hero marketed as an edgy, girl power progressive icon who turns out to be a literal Nazi. Because the image is the product and the person underneath doesn't matter as long as the merchandise keeps selling. Stark Industries and Wayne Enterprises are fantasies of the good megacorporation, the rich company that just happens to use its power responsibly. But Vought is what one of those companies would really be, and it's a lot more believable. And The Boys isn't subtle about who it's aimed at, because inside the show, Vought produces glossy, patriotic superhero blockbusters, all warm lighting and swelling music, made purely to launder the company's image and keep the public adoring. Those movies are an open parody of Marvel, and the point is sharp and a little uncomfortable, because it's saying that the clean, inspiring superhero spectacle that Marvel sells you is, in the world of The Boys, basically propaganda, a product designed to make you love the people who are quietly stepping on you. Where Marvel asks you to trust the institution behind the hero, The Boys tells you the institution is the villain. Then there's the question of who these stories are even about, and The Boys answers it the opposite way Marvel does. Because it isn't about the gods, it's about the people standing underneath them. The show opens by introducing a normal guy named Huey and his girlfriend. Within minutes, a speedster called A-Train sprints straight through her and turns her into a red mist on the sidewalk, then barely even stops.
Robin?
In one scene, the show says everything Marvel spends entire films avoiding, because when superpowered people exist, regular people get treated like insects, and the damage is permanent. Nobody comes back in the sequel. From there, it refuses to hand you anyone clean to root for. Butcher, the supposed hero of the show, turns out to be just as willing to do something monstrous as Homelander, as long as he can call it the greater good, which makes him less Homelander's opposite than his reflection.
Turns out he ain't that dead. He's been working for me, making some more of that virus.
What the fuck?
Starlight joins the Seven as a wide-eyed believer and quickly finds out it's rotten and predatory. And A-Train, the man who killed an innocent woman in the very first episode, spends the rest of the series slowly earning a real shot at redemption. Good people do terrible things. Terrible people do good ones. And that clean line Marvel guards so carefully turns into a complete blur. That blur is the whole point, because real people were never heroes or villains. They're both, depending on the day and on how much power they happen to be holding. Put those three pieces together, and you get a philosophy that's the exact inverse of Marvel's. Power doesn't make you good, it just reveals who you already are. Heroism isn't a sacred calling, it's a product a company sells, and the public that worships these people is part of the problem, because all that worship is the thing that makes a Homelander possible in the first place. So which version of the hero is actually telling the truth? Honestly, it's complicated. And pretending it wasn't would be dishonest. Marvel's version has real value, because sometimes you need to believe that good beats evil, that courage matters, and that the right person will show up when everything else is falling apart. That kind of clarity is genuinely inspiring, and it's a big reason those movies meant so much to so many people, including myself, since a world with no hopeful heroes in it is a pretty bleak place to live. But the reason The Boys hits so hard right now is the part people tend to miss about those darker stories, because it doesn't actually throw the hero away. For all its cynicism, the show still hands you something real to hold on to. It gives you Huey, a powerless nobody who keeps choosing to do the right thing when it would be so much easier not to. It gives you A-Train, clawing his way toward being a better man. It even gives you Homelander as a real tragedy, a picture of what happens to a person who gets handed everything except love. The show questions whether heroes are good, but it never once says heroism is worthless. It just makes you earn it, and that's the shift. People are jaded now because they've watched real powerful figures, celebrities and executives and politicians get away with almost everything, and they've watched the same spotless superhero story get sold to them 100 times. They don't want another hero who always makes the right call. They want a story about what power actually does to a person and what it costs the rest of us to live underneath it. The Boys gives them exactly that, because it takes the superhuman and shows you the human underneath, and that's the reality of heroes that Marvel keeps flinching away from. There's one last reason this comparison cuts as deep as it does, and it's that Marvel could never tell this story, even if it wanted to. Because Marvel is the machine The Boys is making fun of. It's the corporation that manufactures heroes on a schedule, brands them, and sells them back to you as something pure. The Boys is a show about Vought, made for people who grew up loving Vought's movies, and the fact that so many of these people are now nodding along with the satire instead of defending the heroes might be the most honest verdict on this whole genre there is. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and watch this one next.